Hi, and welcome to the Bouncing Back Podcast, Professionals Thriving with Chronic Illness. I'm Melissa McCurley, your host, and someone navigating life and business with the challenges of autoimmune disease. This podcast is about resilience, inspiration, and actionable strategies to help you thrive, no matter where you are in your health journey. In each episode, we'll share stories and insights from professionals who've bounced back stronger. Let's redefine what it means to live and thrive with chronic illness. Now, let's dive in. Hello, my name's Melissa McCurley, and I'm your host for today's podcast. For over 20 years, I've been a professional TV and film actor, as well as a realtor and real estate investor. But in 2020, I experienced a major life reset from autoimmune disease that forced me to step away from everything. 2024 was my first year back working full-time, and now I'm passionate about sharing stories and strategies for creating success while living with chronic illness, because it is possible. I'm incredibly excited to introduce you to today's guest, Heather Seiden.
Hello.
She is a team leader. She's a team leader at the nonprofit Jewish Family Services in Denver, Colorado. She manages 6 full-time people, 2 volunteers, and an intern. She's also my best friend since the 3rd grade, and we've shared most of life's experiences together, including now chronic illness. Heather, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Melissa. Hello, everybody.
So can you start off by telling us a little bit about the nonprofit you work for, Jewish Family Services, and who you serve?
Absolutely. Jewish Family Service of Colorado is a human service agency, and we serve everyone, regardless of gender, race, socioeconomic background, religion, faith, gender identity, sexual orientation. We really serve vulnerable people who are in need. And the way that we serve them is very holistic and kind of wraparound services. So we have over 30 plus programs at JFS, and we support people with housing assistance, food insecurity. We have a food pantry. We have an aging care and connections department that helps older adults stay safely housed in their own homes and independent and supported as long as possible. We have a very robust mental health department that serves adults, children, families, as well as our refugee community. And we became a full-time refugee resettlement agency 3 years ago. And the department that I work for is Employment Services. And I actually helped build and launch us becoming a full department in 2020, which was due to the pandemic when everyone lost their jobs. So we were able to form this department. And my team specifically is called the Career Services team. And I am the program manager of the team, like you mentioned. And what my specific team does is help job seekers of all levels, anyone experiencing barriers such as being unhoused or lacking skills or needing more education, to 6-figure, high-income earning, highly educated individuals who are really just lacking confidence. And so they come to us for this job readiness, support, and preparation to help all of these people create a career path and launch a plan that will lead to successful, meaningful employment for them.
Wow, that's incredible. That's so incredible. And we're going to link this wonderful nonprofit in the show notes and information about you so that it can be a resource for our audience as well. Absolutely. Do you have any idea how many people you've helped since you've been there? Like could you put a number to it?
I would say thousands. Honestly,
Really?
I've been at JFS for 10 and a half years.
Okay.
And I started as an employment case manager working one-on-one with clients in our housing program. So that was our community services, community resource and services department. And then I moved into program coordination a few years after that, and then was promoted to lead the career services team. And that was about 4.5 years ago. So I would say probably in the thousands, not just me, that's my whole team and our collective work. But I love it. It's literally the passion and the energy that gets me up every morning. I'm definitely like you, Melissa. I'm a connector, I'm a supporter, I'm an advocate, and I'm a helper at heart. And for me, the conduit that I use to do that is through employment services and helping people find, launch, or revisit careers that they thought they couldn't do anymore or weren't, able to do. So that's just sort of my mechanism for building people up.
That's amazing. I mean, that's what I'm trying to do with the podcast, right?
Yes.
With a specific, the chronic illness group. Amazing.
Absolutely.
Well, you have your own personal journey with chronic illness. Would you share with us kind of what that is, when it started, and how it impacted your life?
Yes, that's a big question. So I'll
It's a lot to unpack.
try to be succinct. I was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis, also known as RA, 15 years ago. So I was 36 years old and I was young. I had a young full-time mom at the time of a 3-year-old and a 6-year-old, two daughters. So I had a busy household. We were active. I was volunteering on at both of their schools and had them in all the dance and gymnastics and sports, clubs and classes and so forth. And what I loved about being a full-time mom is that was the first time in my life where I really loved what I was doing. So the 7 years I worked prior to that was really a series of jobs and not so much a career path. I learned a lot in those series of jobs. And then when I became a full-time mom, I was like, okay, I finally know what it feels like to love what I'm doing. And so I'm going to learn from that and I'm going to springboard off that feeling and I will return to the workforce when I find something and get clarity that fills me up as much as raising these girls does. So that was like the first lesson. So again, I'm 6 years into being a full-time mom, two kids, and happy and loving my life. And it's sort of funny how I don't know the exact saying, but at first we get whispers. And so the whispers that came to me that something was wrong was for about, I don't know, I would say probably a couple years before I was diagnosed. I would comment often, probably several times throughout the week, to my husband that my feet hurt. And I would just say my feet hurt. And I would blame it on, I was on my feet too long. I ran around, the shoes I was wearing, etc. But it was a pretty common thing I said. He would, sweetheart, he would offer to rub my feet, whatnot. But that was where it started. And then those whispers got a little louder and became kind of a speaking voice. And so a couple of years later, from when I first became a full-time mom, a friend of mine was running her own marketing business from home, and she had some contract work and asked me if I wanted to help do some research and write some brief articles on job searches and do some SEO work. And so I was like, yeah, I'd love to do that. I'd love to learn about launching my own business someday, so I'll help you out. And so the louder voices came because I worked on that for 2 to 3 weeks pretty consistently throughout the day. And what I noticed is after doing research and typing up articles all day or hours of the day, my hands were really hurting and the feet still hurt, but I couldn't make a fist. So the farthest I could do was like that. And I thought, well, that's not good. And so then the loud voice became a scream. And it was when my youngest daughter, Sophie, was 3 years old. And I picked her up to walk down my stairs. And I couldn't walk. I could not walk down the stairs. And I put her down and I was fortunate, quick thinking. I turned it into a game and like scooted down on my bottom and we made it a game how to get down the stairs. But that's the day I realized something's really wrong. And I called the doctor. And so I first saw my PC. They quickly referred me to a rheumatologist. And I made the mistake. So anyone out there listening, I did make the mistake of typing all of my symptoms into WebMD and researching, and I self-diagnosed. It's just not a smart idea to do because
Granny Google. Yeah, there are better
yeah.
resources.
So I self-diagnosed that I had gout or diabetic neuropathy in my foot, even though I didn't have diabetes. And I will just say this is funny, Melissa, like I read about rheumatoid arthritis and instantly skipped over it because I saw the word arthritis and I thought that's for older people, that's for aging adults, and that's not me. So I didn't even consider it. And then I found myself at the rheumatologist's office and it was pretty quick within 30 minutes. I think even before, they didn't have the blood test back, but he pretty much said, I'm pretty confident you have rheumatoid arthritis. When he explained it to me. And then when we got the blood work back, my numbers, C-reactive proteins, and those numbers were off the charts. So that's how it started. And what were your other questions?
So impacting your life. I mean, obviously, come with the pain in the feet. What kinds in your daily life, like how did it affect you?
So the immediate impact was I was in so much pain. And by that, and I have a pretty high pain tolerance level. And so I was at a 10 out of 10 at the time of diagnosis. And so I could hardly walk. I limped and I walked really slowly. And I will just share with you, Melissa, to this day, I can be impatient when I'm driving, the cuss words flow. But when I am somewhere behind someone walking slowly or limping, I really try to be patient and calm and hold space for them because I don't know what's going on for them. And I was that person for a long time. So after diagnosis, it took about 2.5, almost 3 years to get to a point where my pain was minimized to where I was effectively functioning. And so the impact was immediate. Being a full-time mom and managing a household of two busy girls, the first impact I can recall is I was put on prednisone, which is a steroid, to minimize, to help reduce the pain, to get from
Okay.
that level 10 just to a level 5. Most people that take steroids now, they take them for short courses to get rid of any kind of illness or inflammation. I was on prednisone for a year and a half.
Wow.
And so I recall one of the side effects being I was just starving and pretty amped up. And so I immediately gained, I think, 25 to 30 pounds within the first year. And I
Wow.
honestly didn't care because, and we know we're besties, like weight's been something that we've talked about and struggled with literally since middle school. And so the fact that I didn't care was sort of how much pain I was in.
Yeah.
And then over those couple of years, 2.5 to 3 years, I tried a course of 8 different medications. And
Wow.
I started with, and my doctor started small. So I started with the smallest NSAIDs. And I did start a typical course of treatment for RA patients is to also include a drug called methotrexate, which is a
Okay.
pediatric cancer medication, and
Okay.
it can have serious implications to the liver. And so
Mm.
I remember starting that and being nervous. I did enjoy, wine every now and then and just being nervous. And I remember a friend of mine who's a nurse practitioner at the VA hospital, and she specializes in liver biopsies and that kind of work. When I told her I was diagnosed and what I was on, she literally said, "See you on my table in 10 years for a liver biopsy." So that was
Mm.
very discouraging. And so I tell you that because throughout all these trials and error, and the pain was sort of never, I mean, it was reduced and I was at a level 5 or 6, and, I could walk a little bit and whatnot, but it was a frustrating process because I am kind of an instant gratification person and I want results quickly. And I wanted the pain to stop so that my life could kind of get back to normal. And so that did take about 3 years to get to. And what my doctor and I came to the realization, he was very kind and supportive, and he did start small and kind of worked his titrated up, not starting with the biggest medicine, but he did come to the conclusion that my level of autoimmune disease was severe and acute. And so the next step for me was to try a biologic. That came with certain risks,
Mhm.
primarily being increased levels of lymphoma
Right.
associated. Turns out it's not so much, the risk is not with the biologic per se. There's a risk of all kinds of increased levels of cancer related to high levels of inflammation. And
Right.
I have high levels of inflammation. So I agreed again, but this was driven, I had a very willing mindset to try anything he recommended and to trust in him because I was being guided by so much pain. So I don't know if that's a good or bad thing. It's just the facts for me at the time.
It does
And
clarify
so
things.
what?
Pain does clarify things.
It does. And I have a lot of friends, you included, and others in my life who prefer more natural, holistic pathway to wellness. And I sort of skipped over that right away because that's how acute my pain was. It
Yeah.
felt like fire running through my veins was the only way I knew how to describe it. And my joints, as most autoimmune sufferers know, were hot and stiff and painful. And that's not a great way to go through life. And so I tried the biologic Remicade, and that was about 12 and a half years ago. And the cool thing is, so that has worked for me, and that has negated my pain to a zero point 0.5 to 0 level range. In fact, the
Wow.
last couple of years, I've been in full remission. Remission with RA does mean staying medicated. If I go
Mhm.
off Remicade, my body will not ever accept it again. And there are
Mm.
other, I'm fortunate my insurance has continued to cover it for all these years. And I acknowledge I have a lot of privilege in that. If I didn't have good insurance, I'd be in a wheelchair. That's also a fact. And the people I serve often don't have insurance or good insurance. And so I'm really tightly connected to the level of privilege I have and where I could be without that level of privilege. So that was kind of my journey in those first few years. And what I will say about my spirit is I'm someone who shows up in life and at work now very willing. Like I'm front row, second row, raising my hand. How can I help? How can I participate? How can I make things better? And I call that a willing mindset. So I had that going into my treatment again to get rid of the pain.
Yeah.
And I've continued that ongoing. And so for me, I'm not going to lie and say I didn't have a pity party for those first couple of years. I did. I almost switched doctors. I tend, when I don't like what doctors are saying, I'll get a second or third opinion. I've even switched doctors for my kids when I didn't like what I was hearing, and it has worked out well. But I did get second opinions, even though I liked my rheumatologist a
Yeah.
lot. I just thought there's got to be something better or more. And so I chose to see, I interviewed with a female rheumatologist and thought there's got to be hormones and something about being a woman involved in this. And I liked her, but something in my gut said stay with him.
Mm.
That was a smart choice because she actually resigned from her practice like a
Oh,
year later. But I will say, I brought up that willing mindset because for me, I didn't want to feel like a victim or the impact of my disease was it for me. And so I'd already been sort of grappling with I've been fortunate enough to choose to be a full-time mom for all these years. And I'm ready to do something in addition and more. And so what I did was started volunteering, doing the work I knew I wanted to get paid for, but I just wanted to check it out, test it out for free, and see if I really liked it and if it filled my soul the way I thought it would. Fortunately, it did. I volunteered at workforce centers, Dress for Success of Denver. If
Okay.
you know that
Nice.
organization, it's a worldwide organization. It does a lot of work to empower women. I also was a guest presenter at Look Good, Feel Better, which is a division of the American Cancer Society that
Okay.
helps women going through treatment. They used to get a $400 kit of brand new Chanel, Lancome, Clarins high-level makeup products and tips on styling wigs and hair coverings and
Hmm.
things like that. And honestly, if I didn't do what I do now, which was running a career services program, I'd probably be a makeup artist because both are helping and empowering people to feel their best, feel more confident, and show up, more wholly in their lives. And so I did that as well. And through all the volunteer experiences, really realized I was ready to go back to work.
Okay.
So I started my own journey of my job search and got very clear that I wanted to help people in need. And usually that's a place, that's in the nonprofit world.
Right.
And so I started at a nonprofit where I worked for a year and a half as a career services advisor and definitely loved it. And I started working 3 days a week, so part-time.
Okay. So part-time. Okay.
Yep. And that was sort of my entrance so that I still had a couple days a week to do stuff with my kids and my doctor's appointments and whatnot.
How much did you share real quick going in? Like, were you just totally open book? Here's what's going on with me. Did you not? That's a question people
I was
have when
pretty
they,
open.
you're
I
okay.
run, as you know, pretty open. And that was not something that I tried to hide from my kids. I think there's other aspects of my life that I have been more reserved about sharing the details, particularly when they were young. But I was really open. I think
And
they
with your
knew.
employer also?
And my part-time employer, where I worked in Conifer Mountain Resource Center, I don't recall if I think I told them they were only hiring part-time, and I don't
Mm,
recall how much I shared, but I'm pretty open. So I think they
okay.
knew on my off days what I was dealing with.
Okay.
But then I interviewed and got accepted to work full-time at Jewish Family Service. And that's an interesting question you asked because I coach job seekers all the time about how much do you share? What are the negotiating options as you're looking at an offer, so forth. And so, certainly not in the first or second interview did I mention my health care needs.
Okay.
But as it was getting to that third and final interview, and we were sort of feeling like, I'm liking you, you're liking me, this is going somewhere. I did so strategically. And I just mentioned, I also have two young kids at home. What is it like to work here? What are the flexible options for parents or people with other healthcare needs? And I did it in a professional way, but also strategic and honest. I tried to blend all three, not leading with, hey, I have this chronic disease that requires me to get an infusion every 8 weeks and miss half a day. That's not how but then when it came to the offer, I was more open and said, hey, I do have a health condition. It is chronic that does require half a day out for an infusion. Are you open to working some creative hours around that? And I'm fortunate they were. And I have
Okay.
no doubt that Jewish Family Services sort of flexible work-life balance system, and it was, not every department director is the same, but the director I was under then and the one I'm under now do offer that really blended, be honest, do your work, work hard, and earn the trust to take care of what else you need to in your personal lives.
Gotcha.
I now treat my team that way because I was treated that way. I'm also a really hard worker. So I did mention that, and I was able to initiate when I started working full time some flexibility on the days I needed every 8 weeks, half a day off. And then I realized I also really missed my kids. And so
Hmm.
I negotiated, can I come in really early in the morning and leave by 3 to pick up my kids from school? And so fortunately that was given to me. But I do want to share with you, Melissa, that 4 months into my full-time work career, I was struggling in many ways. And sort of the catalyst for that was my mom's health began to fail
Hmm.
significantly. And it was a beginning of what eventually did become the end. And so I freaked out and panicked. And I tried to quit my job at JFS. And fortunately, I worked for a really smart, kind woman who I hid for about a week and I went in to quit. And she sort of didn't let me and helped talk me through. I lead with a lot of emotion and energy, and she is a very balanced, neutral person. And so she helped break things down and point blank said, do you need to work less hours? And I said, yes, I do. And so I went from our full-time week is 37.5 hours, and I reduced my work week to 26, maybe
Okay.
24. And I will tell you, literally the day I did that, I took a day, Wednesdays, midweek off, and that was my day to do infusions or other doctor's appointments or whatever I needed to do or rest, be with my kids, what have you.
Yeah.
And as soon as I cut my hours back, my productivity soared. And
Wow.
started seeing my workload didn't change. I had a full-time client caseload, but it fit my needs. And that was the first time I
Mm.
realized kind of shifting to what you need can make all the difference. And so I'm fortunate that my boss at the time saw that I needed more time and everything changed for me with that. And that is no doubt why I've been employed at JFS for more than 10 years.
And so, how do you take those lessons, the focus you learned from living with pain, probably lessons you've learned from being an amazing mom, you're an amazing mom, and then having a leader like that when you needed them, do you bring that to your team that you run now?
It's a really good question. Thanks for asking it. I think the things I've learned and so what I've learned in myself and the people that I now hire and mentor as a team lead, I really value a willing mindset like my own. So I need people that are willing to participate, show up fully, work hard. And when they do that, I trust them and I coach them. Trust your instincts when you're with clients, when you're coaching clients, when you're writing resumes or other career documents. Trust your instincts. You don't have to rely on my level of expertise. I'm happy to answer questions. Now we have AI, ChatGPT, Perplexity. You certainly don't have to copy and paste. Those can be really effective tools to help us create frameworks or help us work more quickly, but it shouldn't replace your mind and your voice, or certainly that of your clients. So I trust them. I ask them to trust their instincts. I treat them like adults. I don't micromanage unless someone gives me a reason to. I actually don't like to do that. It's normally the sign that that person needs to leave. I can step into difficult conversations much more easily than I ever could. It's still not easy, but what I have learned is being clear and honest and direct is kind. That's actually one of Brene Brown's teaching in Daring to Lead, which I'm trained in. And my mentor, one of my leadership coaches, she is trained in everything, but she works under Brene Brown and has the person who trained me. And so
Wow.
when I work with her, the sign behind her is really big and it says clear as kind. And so I sit into those difficult conversations and I do much less avoiding. I try to cut to the chase and I encourage my team to do the same. I encourage them to be honest. And the other things I will say that I learned from my own journey, I've never been one that's shy to ask for help, but I think I lean more into that now. And I know that that's not everyone's strength. A lot of people are prideful and don't feel comfortable asking for help. And I really have created and built a team of kind of in Heather's corner. I have helpers in terms of really strong friendships like you and many others, a very strong family source. My husband is my best friend in the whole world, my partner, and someone that he really balances my energy. He tends to be a linear thinker and very calm, but he's a resource for me. He's been in leadership for 23 years. And so he helps me when I need support on how to be better or stronger at managing a team. And I have a financial budgeting coach. I have a therapist. I get massages every 5 to 8 weeks. I see a chiropractor every 6 weeks. I've been working out with a doctor of physical therapy. Again, I'm privileged to do that. It takes a lot of resources, but he's also my trainer. And I'm down 48 pounds in the last 15 months.
You
That's
look
enormous.
amazing. You look
Thank you.
amazing. I'm a
Thank
little
you.
jealous, but good jealous. Like, go for you and inspiring. Yeah.
You are stunning. And you know what the difference is? It's not even how I look. Strengthening my muscles over the last 15 months. I lift really heavy weights with him is basically what I do. Heavier
Okay.
than I ever thought I could do and kind of different. It's making my brain stronger. It's making me a more confident human being, a more confident leader, and trusting my own self. Like no matter what I teach workshops, I teach corporate workshops and individuals, small groups, and obviously I mentor my team. But what it's taught me is I think true confidence is knowing that you can handle whatever's coming your way. You may not have the answers or know how to handle it, but that's sort of how I define true confidence. And so that's what I try and sit in, and that's what lifting these weights has done. Like, I don't know how I'm going to get through everything. And Melissa, I've been through some stuff. It's
Yeah.
very real. It's very
Yeah.
hard. But to trust that I'll figure it out and I will get through it is sort of a balancing system for me that I try to impart on my team and my clients.
And you live that. I mean, I watch you live that every day. So
Thanks.
I know that's real.
And you have really strong shoulders too for me to lean on. Melissa, you've just been
Thank you.
such an inspiration and a resource to me.
Well, I
It's nice
appreciate
to have
that.
someone that loves you and knows every single thing about you and still loves you.
Thank you. And it's weird. Like we've been through everything. Like she was literally there the first time I got kissed, and I think vice versa in middle school to
And you kissed
now.
the boy
Like,
I liked and started dating
sorry,
him.
I was a bitch. I had to go through that. Thank you for your ability to forgive and to create space for everything. But now we're like kind of doing the chronic. You were on it first, right? But the chronic illness journey together is like I hate that we share it, but I'm also grateful that we share it. You
Yeah.
know, it's a big part of life. Well, let
And
me
you've
ask
been so
you.
inspiring. Yeah.
Well, thank
Your
you.
own
I
journey. Yeah.
appreciate you.
Yeah.
So we're kind of wrapping up on time, but I'd love to hear for that person who is where we've both been, where they're really in the pain of it, right? Maybe they're at a pain 8 and they're trying some things and they're not working, and maybe they don't have as much support around them from family as friends and friends. What would you say to them? How can they start? How can they get a little further tomorrow than they are today, even when they can't see it yet?
I love that question. And I honestly teach a class on that, on motivation and
Okay.
confidence. So to me, the way I define that is motivation. I don't know if that's the actual, but I look at it as those baby steps and it's like keep going. And the power of the word pivot is enormous too. So when something's not working, and remember, I had almost 3 years and 8 medications that did not work. They reduced the pain, but they did not work to the point where I felt energized to do more than I had been doing. And so I know that frustration. And I think you have to find a way to look for that light at the end of the tunnel. And it might just be a sliver of that light at the very end of that tunnel. But you got to keep looking. So for me, that takes persistence, it takes patience. And I think passion and figuring out passion is a strong word. I kind of live by it. I find it in everything, or otherwise I just won't be engaged. But at least the persistence and the patience and at least the willingness. You got to keep like that curious mindset. When one thing
Yeah.
doesn't work, when one door shuts, when five shut, when five don't work, you got to keep looking, that kind of insatiable hunger to find the answer. And that may not be every day. Like it's okay to have 3 days or 5 days where you give yourself permission to lay in bed or rest or drink water or tea or do whatever it is that heals you and fills you up, listening to podcasts, whatever those things are that nurture you. But then say, I'm going to give myself 1 day or half of 2 days where I am going to look for other and whatever that looks like. And in my research and my journeys and kind of my 4 steps into what's next, I found a website that no longer exists, but it was designed for moms going through autoimmune disease. And I was so taken by the woman who founded it, who was of similar age to me at the time, and launched this and shared her story so openly and vulnerably that I reached out to her and emailed her and say, I'm an aspiring writer. I have no idea what I want that to look like, but I'd love to blog for you about my own journey. And I did a few blog posts for her and got paid. Yeah.
Wow.
And so that was early on. And that was while I was also volunteering and kind of figuring out what's next. But I leaned into the part of me. And I will say, I've been through a lot in life. I understand depression. I understand anxiety. I understand high levels of cortisol and internal disruption inside. And what I've learned by literally sitting in that, and I still sit in that today, I just know how to manage it a lot better,
Yeah.
is, you know, never give up, keep looking, ask for help, find those people, those resources, those chat groups. And Melissa, you research tremendously. You watch long form podcasts. You created something now to fill the gap for people in this space. I mean, you read voraciously. It's like you may not find it in those first weeks or even years. It took me a few years, but something you read or hear, maybe it's this conversation we're having today, something that you hear will click. And I take down those notes, and that is like the outside force pushing me to keep going or look in another direction. So I guess ultimately what I would say is, as we talked about earlier, like at first things start as those whispers, and then it's a louder voice in your head or those instincts, that feeling in your tummy, and then it's a loud thing that you can't ignore. And so pay attention to,
Yeah.
and I'm about to lead a workshop. I'm leading a presentation for the C-suite at a national conference on April
Oh, wow.
28th here in Denver. And what I'm talking about is head, heart, and gut, and using each of those brains, our head brain, our heart brain, and our gut brain, our instincts, to lead people to make decisions in life and to guide our own paths. And that's what I really think when we listen to those voices,
Yeah.
we're going to make good decisions and find what we're looking for.
I love that. I love that so much. That's one of my goals with this podcast is it's not an either or. You don't have to ignore your body to stay successful in your brain. And I had that programming without realizing it, right? That really success is when we meld it all together. It's a yes and, right? I'm using my brain and I'm keying into my body and I'm listening to my instincts, right? And I'm allowing my spirit to be present in all of it. That when we
And
do
giving
that, that's,
permission for it all to work together. Can I just tell
yeah,
you, Melissa, you just freaked me out. I wrote down in bold on my notes, my biggest lesson is it's not either or. I either have RA or I don't, or I have RA and I don't work. Instead, it is yes and. I have RA and I have a successful career.
that's it.
So
That's it.
I'm like gobsmacked that you just said literally what I wrote
Well,
down.
we've
And
got
I'm
that
also
twin
not.
separate at birth thing,
I know.
that like we've always had that. So
But that's beautiful that you just said it. It's really true.
thank you. Well, I think that speaks to how true it is, and we both, like you said, we're coming to this, we're at a point now where we have a pretty good toolbox and we have some awareness. It's not our first rodeo with it. And I think that's probably a common, that's a key realization for people to have.
Yeah, and I
So
want to remind your listeners that the most important resources we have are the time and energy, and frankly, the money that we put towards things. And what you
yeah,
just said, putting our time and our energy and our money towards that toolbox that we each have to build for ourselves is really how we're going to come out on the other end, or at least through it in a better way.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Well, I appreciate you so much. Any final words?
No, you're such an inspiration to me, and
Oh,
I have
thank you.
hopes of being an author, speaker, and podcaster someday, and having this experience and being invited on to your new endeavor here.
You.
It has really inspired me, and I'm just so proud and happy and excited for you, and can't wait to see how big and bold you get and how many
No,
people that you change their lives through your own
thank
experiences.
you.
Yeah,
Thank you. I appreciate it. Well, you've been doing that for 15 years, so I figure it's my turn to step up. Well, thank you so much.
you're
I'm gonna
welcome.
link Jewish Family Services Colorado down below. Anything, where can people find you if they have questions, if they want to reach out?
If they want to reach out directly, they can reach me. My email is hseiden, Seiden, at jewishfamilyservice, that's one service.org. Or you can call or text me. Text is the fastest way to reach me at 720-248-4644.
Wow, thank you. Thank you.
You're
I appreciate your
welcome.
share.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, if you enjoyed today's podcast, please don't forget to subscribe, leave us a review. And if you know someone who would benefit from these stories of success, please share this with them. Be sure to follow up with Heather, ask her questions, and check out Jewish Family Service, no S. We'll share the links in the show notes below. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Bouncing Back podcast. We'll be back in 2 weeks with more inspiring stories of success. So until then, keep bouncing back. Thank you so much for joining me on this episode of the Bouncing Back podcast, Professionals Thriving with Chronic Illness. I hope you found inspiration and actionable takeaways to support you on your journey. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who might need a little encouragement today. Remember, thriving with chronic illness is possible. You are stronger than you think. Until next time, take care and keep bouncing back.